Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Kara Franklin. I'm a business development director here at Boyer, and I'll be helping facilitate the discussion today. Boyer's been a Microsoft partner for over 30 years, and we're committed to serving in the nonprofit community with system modernization. So before we dive in, I want to ask you to please drop any questions that you have in the chat as we go. So we have reserved time at the end of this session to come back to them, and we're going to address as many as we can with the time that we have. So anything that we don't get to, we will be sure to follow up on individually afterwards. So today, we're here to talk about architecting for impact. So what does this mean for nonprofits? And why do you care, right? What is this about? So at most nonprofits, what we see, this is just a common theme that we see, is that complexity isn't something that's chosen by design on purpose, but it's just something that sort of accumulates over time as we start to see a point solution is selected for this, and then another point solution is selected for this over here. And now we've got one over here for this. And we start to see a lot of, ad hoc solutions kind of getting mandated together. And so what happens is, and of course that's natural, right? You have different scenarios that put pressure on, we need this right now, or you have different constraints at different times. And then of course, as time goes on, you've got different owners in the organization. So it's completely understandable how this happens. But what we want to talk to you about is how the difference you're going to see if you're purposeful and intentional about making sure that your data foundation is solid with everything connected. We want to move away from that disconnected data, the manual workarounds. Those are all things that contribute to lack of confidence in reporting. Like, do we trust what we're seeing here? We have so many systems. Is this a true representation, right? You start to lose some visibility, lose some transparency, those kind of things. So the other thing I wanted to say is that today we're not focusing on, this is not a demo. We're not here to do a product demo. And nor are we here to just flip you through a bunch of slides. So that's not what today is about. We're here to just have a discussion. So we're not going to be focused on details of feature functionality. This is the best tool for this. This is the best tool for that. That's also not what today is about. What today is about is we're taking a step back to look at the foundation that those tools all rely on. So really what's underneath supporting that. So that's where we're going to be digging in today. And especially because as we think about it, we all know that tech it's always moving, right? It's moving at such a fast pace that if we start to get stuck in that feature functionality mindset, within 6 months, within a year, all of a sudden everything's changed around that. And so really what we want to do is we want to get that foundational data architecture in place so that, if there are innovation on the edges, we can pivot, we can flex, we can adopt and grab what we need, grab the best of breed that's out there, but put it into that core solid data architecture platform. So again, not a demo, though. For those of you who are interested in that, I do want to let you know that next week we will have more of a hands-on look at Dynamics and the Power Platform. So we do have a demo session scheduled for next week where you can start to visualize and conceptualize what this looks like in practice a little bit better. So to help explore this topic, I'm joined by two people who see this challenge from somewhat different but still complementary perspectives. I have Jen Singer from Microsoft's Elevate team. So for those of you who know, this was formerly the Tech for Social Impact team. And Jen partners with nonprofits, and Microsoft partners around business process solutions. So that's going to be anything from ERP, which is of course your accounting system, CRM, and Power Platform, and supplementing that with AI. So where does AI fit into this? So that's something we'll be talking about today as well, is how that platform foundation can better set you up for AI. So she does bring that Microsoft perspective today on how data foundations, governance, platform decisions connect to things like reporting, adoption, AI readiness, all those things. I'm also joined by Matt Fleming, our VP of Technology here at Boyer. And Matt is going to help us understand how an organization's data foundation either supports that work and mission, or what happens when we do see that data sprawl that makes it harder. That's when things like reporting or integrations or governance start to feel brittle. And we want to talk about what changes when that data is connected intentionally rather than through those ad hoc workarounds. So the messages that you'll hear today are going to be talking about that point solution versus the platform strategy. So defining some terms. We're going to spend some time defining some terms. What the nonprofit common data model is, how it fits in with Dataverse, Power Platform, terms that you're hearing, what those are, and why do we care? Like, why does this foundation matter more than any single system decision? So that's what we'll be talking about. And so let's start with the big picture. Jen, we'll go ahead and start with you. From Microsoft's perspective, what do you see happening when nonprofits solve fundraising, grants, volunteers, programs, things like that as isolated point solutions?
Thanks, Kara. What we consistently see is that nonprofits don't set out to build complex environments. Complexity accumulates over time. Each system is usually selected for a good reason, but when they're implemented in isolation, the organization ends up with fragmented data. That fragmentation shows up in very practical ways. Different definitions of a constituent, different totals and reports, manual reconciliation, and a growing reliance on spreadsheets just to answer basic questions. From a platform perspective, the challenge isn't the individual tools, it's the lack of shared data foundation that allows those tools to work together reliably.
Okay, thanks, Jen. That makes sense. So Matt, I'd like to turn that over to you. When you start thinking about what does this look like, is it showing up in real nonprofit environments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you make a good point there, Jen. Complexity is not ever intentional. Obviously, no one, I don't think, sets out to make their day job harder. But in the field, we do see some really common patterns occur. The first thing that I think is most important is what does this do for the donor experience, right? It's easy to see when you have all these different point solutions that that experience can be worse. A great example of this, I think, is imagine a major donor giving a bunch of different donations in through different channels, one at an event, one through a direct mail, and then one through maybe an online portal or something like that. If that donor is getting three different thank you letters with different layouts and formats and all those types of things, or if they're getting asked to make a donation that maybe they've already made and those fundraisers are not aware of that, it creates a lot of friction and doubt for the donor, right? In the back of their head, they're probably thinking, well, if they can't figure out how to ask me for the right things, what are they doing with my money when they go to the programs that I am, willing to give for? So I think that's probably the most important thing to me. Additionally, obviously, we see a lot of patterns around constituents. So not only maybe what the definition of a constituent is between systems, but sometimes constituents might live in disparate systems and we don't have one single source of truth. So do we have the same person in multiple places, or do we have, a conglomeration? If you add all these things together, that gives us a bigger picture, but not one true 360-degree view. I think the manual reconciliation thing, definitely see that a lot where it's like, okay, we're dumping things from all of our point solutions into our favorite thing, Excel, not because we want to, but because that's the easiest way for us to marry up our data, even though it's time consuming and tedious. So I think those are some really, really good examples. And more often than not, like I said, I think this is a foundational problem. That's what gets us really started talking about the common data model for nonprofits. And when I think about that a little bit, just kind of on the high level, that's kind of your basic foundation for how the whole business can run.
Yeah, those are really great points. I end up talking to a lot of nonprofits in my role, and that's some of the first thing that I hear them say is, we're in Excel, we're exporting everything to Excel, we're trying to tie it together. We don't necessarily trust it because once we get it in Excel, we're starting to worry about reconciliation problems and those kind of things. And I think that 360-degree view is so important as well. You can have somebody who is a constituent, who is a donor, who is, multiple things
Mhm.
for that organization. And if you don't have that big picture, they're getting disjointed messaging. Okay, so let's see. So Matt, do you want to actually take a little bit of time and go ahead and explain some of those terms that we were talking about? So
Sure.
nonprofit common data model, Dataverse, Power Platform, what does this mean and why should we care?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and start off with the common data model for nonprofits. What this is, or an easy way to think about this, is a kind of a pre-built vocabulary of tables, columns, etc., that sits on top of Dataverse, which we'll discuss next. What that does is just give the business that common vocabulary to figure out, it's optimized. Not every nonprofit is completely different, right? Everyone is dealing with constituents. We've all got pledges, we've all got donations. And so this system kind of or the data model just standardizes that across the whole business. So that gives common definitions to the things that nonprofits actually care about. Rather than having each system telling you, oh, a donor is this or a household is that, everything pulls from that same common definition. The practical effect of this is that that common language allows us to standardize when we're talking about integrations and reporting, so that they stop becoming custom every time. When we get, the thing that kind of sits below that in the Microsoft stack is Dataverse. And that's kind of, I like to think about that as all the materials that it takes you to build your house, right? In a house, you've got wire, lumber, plywood, all of those things, right? Here we've got a data store in one spot that has APIs where other systems can reach out and talk to that in a consistent and repeatable way every time. We've got security models, and then we've got some standard low code ways of building applications so that our users can see and use all this valuable data that the organization has. So that's, I think, that's really why the Microsoft investment here matters. Jen, you can probably speak to the why behind what Microsoft's doing here better than anyone.
Absolutely, Matt. Microsoft invested in a nonprofit common data model because nonprofits fundamentally have different operating needs than commercial organizations. Concepts like households, constituents, donations, grants, programs, and outcomes don't map cleanly to generic data models. The common data model provides a shared nonprofit specific language inside Dataverse. It defines how core nonprofit data is structured so that fundraising, programs, finance, and reporting systems can align by design rather than through custom integrations. That investment is really about long-term stability, the standardization, security, and giving partners a consistent foundation to build on.
Yeah, I think that is the key piece of it is Microsoft, is committed to the nonprofit space, and they have invested in building this nonprofit common data model so that we do have standardization. We're all speaking the same thing when we're using those terms. So Matt, what does change operationally when nonprofits adopt the common data model as that backbone foundation?
Yeah, so here I want to um, go to a customer example of one of ours. So, kind of the high level
Mhm.
summary of the customer. It's a national nonprofit that does legal services for people around the country. It's about 100 staff that supports roughly 3,000 advocates and lawyers across more than 450 different organizations. So, When we started working with them, they had a ton of different disconnected systems. And a lot of the time, even the advocates and volunteers that they were having would have to have multiple logins that they were managing across all these different web properties they were coming in to get the help and leverage the organization. So another big pain point that they had is every single event they had, they wanted to capture different pieces of data about those registrants. That data was collected in surveys that were custom built every time. A lot of the time, it was less than a 50% response rate on those things. And so, what they found is that their core network data about all of their affiliates was stale for most of the year, which required a ton of legwork to make that captured data valuable, right? They had to go take all this stuff, figure out what fields it was going into in one of these disparate systems. Another big pain point that this organization had is that they were using Outlook essentially for all of their customer service or case management system, essentially. So, literally inbox only communications. If you wanted to know where something was at, you might have to go through a thread of email that's 12 to 14 back and forths and just not really efficient. And then another place where they were having a lot of difficulties was grant management lifecycle. So all of that, like the application piece was all the grant writing piece, all just tribal knowledge spread across a bunch of different SharePoint documents throughout the organization. So you can kind of see they've, there's a lot of different problems across the full business there. What we did for them is we moved them on to the Microsoft ecosystem with Dataverse as that shared foundation, and then the common data model sitting on top of that. The first thing we did was started with their ERP system. We put them onto Dynamics 365 Business Central, which allowed us to build them a fund accounting layer so that they could understand their financial reporting and grant tracking in one model. Then we flipped over for me to the more exciting side of things, how we can affect our constituents. We built the CRM, we built event management and fundraising, customer service, and even an affiliate portal. So I mentioned kind of the affiliate portal thing previously. Now they're logging into one place to get all of the information that they need to serve their clients. So what kind of outcomes happened here? Now the finance team can aggregate and slice reports in ways they couldn't do it before in just a few minutes. Program financials flow back into the ERP in real time. So we manage them in the CRM system, but then all of the accounting is happening. There's not reconciliation cycles that have to happen weekly, monthly, quarterly. Constituent data is now gathered live in that event registration. And that's centralized, brought directly into the database, which is the system of record. They don't have to manage those painful data imports anymore. We did lay a foundation for the affiliate portal where those 3,000 advocates can update their profiles, sign up for trainings, do all of these things in one data model with one login. And then as a byproduct of this, there's a lot of data cleanup that's happening, one system at a time. And we even had a director there kind of joke that he wanted a tattoo that read single source of truth. This customer is really, really exciting and they're all in on everything. One story I like to share is that their IT manager probably said it best when he said, everything that we're building is designed to amplify and enhance our ability to serve our network. This guy was kind of crazy, had like the full common data model relationship diagram on the wall in his office. So just kind of to summarize here, reporting got faster. Integrations are more resilient and more repeatable to build. And then we've pulled a lot of things that were institutional knowledge into a centralized system. So we don't have the risk of someone leaving and taking a whole bunch of tribal knowledge with them. And I think that's what matters, just not for today's reporting, but also sustainability of staff systems and strategies as they evolve. So.
Yeah, I think that that nonprofit is a great example. And I do want to point out, this is over the course of 3 years. This is not a just one and done, let's grab it and go. They committed to this underlying foundation so that they could have that transparency and big picture in that, again, that single source of truth, right? Like that's such an important piece, is that 360 view and single source of truth. And but it's something that you can adopt slowly over time, right? And most nonprofits were working with some sort of budget constraints. And so, that whole giant all at once isn't always reasonable or feasible, but
Mhm.
do one part and then do the next part. That's absolutely feasible for a lot of nonprofits. Okay, so Jen, moving on, let's talk about what Microsoft is thinking about AI and automation in the nonprofit space.
Yeah,
And then not only that, but what is the role that the actual data model is playing in how we think about AI and automation and what's possible?
absolutely. AI is only as effective as the data that it's built on. So for nonprofits, that means having clean, connected, and governed data, not just adding more data to that. Dataverse and the nonprofit common data model provide a trusted foundation where AI and automation can be applied responsibly, whether that's forecasting, donor insights, or operational efficiency. Without that foundation, AI tends to amplify inconsistencies rather than solve them. I also wanted to provide an example. Recently, we just published a case study with Special Olympics, which you can read on a few of our different sites, where the value of a shared data foundation shows up in a very practical, very human way. At Special Olympics, one person can be many things at once. They can be an athlete, a volunteer, a coach, and a family member. A common data model is what lets them see that whole person instead of four disconnected records. By using a shared data model across Power Pages and Dynamics 365, local programs can move fast while leadership still has consistent, trusted insight across the organization. That foundation powers accessible self-service experiences, helped more athletes register independently, and allowed engagement to be more personal and inclusive. And because that data foundation was already in place, Special Olympics was able to layer in AI naturally, not as a bolt on. By integrating Copilot into registration, volunteer, and education experience, athletes can engage with information in ways that work best for them, whether that's adjusting response speed, using larger text, or connecting through accessibility tools like hearing aids. And that's what the data foundation enables, not just better systems, but better experiences. And when that foundation is in place, AI becomes a tool for inclusion and insight and not added complexity.
Yeah, I think that's a great you made a couple of really good points there. One, that we didn't touch on as much is that data hygiene piece, right? When we have a system over here, and a system over here, and we're trying to reconcile across, the data hygiene becomes, questionable. But when it's all in one place and you have, that core foundation is where your tables sit, it's a lot easier to keep your data clean and reliable. And then I love what you're saying about the AI and how that can be included. Once your data foundation is solid, you can include that and it doesn't, I guess what I'm trying to say is like AI, when we just apply it to piecemeal solutions, because you're seeing it, right? It's all over the marketplace. Just about every piecemeal solution now has some sort of a claim around AI and what it can do. And where Microsoft is different is there's the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is going to be sort of a foundation across the ecosystem of the Microsoft products, with each product itself also having embedded AI. And so when you combine these, they really do amplify synergistically to give you sort of that exponential benefit of the AI. Matt, I know you've for sure been digging a lot into the AI. Do you
Mhm.
mind just sharing a minute your thoughts on how this foundation is going to better set somebody up for adding AI, especially when we start thinking about
Yeah,
governance
I
and
think
security.
I think the biggest thing I want to focus on here is kind of like what's happening, the investments that Microsoft is making is the most important thing to me, right? We've got multiple products, right? And Kara, you kind of touched on right now what Microsoft has really been focused on is what can you do with Copilot inside of your apps that you're building on top of this common data model. But the thing that I'm really excited about seeing in the very near future here, there's multiple different public previews of things going on right now, with being able to register, like render an app widget inside of Copilot so users can kind of stick in that one place. The other big thing that I think is going to be a huge game changer is just that Microsoft is working. They've got the concept of Work IQ. That's the work tab in Copilot, if you're all familiar with that. Very soon, that Dataverse thing that we mentioned is going to be an out of the box source of truth with all the security applied to it for each user of Copilot itself. So I think that's really powerful. That's one experience now pulling maybe the Outlook emails that you didn't track in your CRM system, plus that CRM type data about your donors from Dataverse, plus X, Y, and Z from this report here, and this spreadsheet there, this PowerPoint deck that you had here, this Teams message you had with your strategic donors team there. All of that stuff comes together when you use when you're in the full Microsoft stack, and the friction to implement that is really low, which is the key. Not a lot of time, not a lot of investment, not a lot of work for a partner, but things that, I think as we get there, we're getting to a place where it just works is kind of something that's more and more true every day.
And I can see that in my own experience, just even what we have today, it's mind blowing, like how it can pull things to give you a much bigger picture. Like even resources I might have forgotten about. Sometimes if I just type in a general prompt, it'll pull different things and say, oh, I found this, this, and this on this and tie them together in. So sometimes it gives you a bigger picture of your data, even without you specifically calling out those different
Mhm.
resources. So absolutely. And I think as that Dataverse gets connected there, we're going to see even better. And the key thing here is um, when you're working the in the Microsoft ecosystem, you think about you have your single sign-on, you have that governance or the security layer that comes from Microsoft, all of those things that we rely on for in a world where, sometimes there are bad actors or things like that. And just the governance piece, right? Instead of having to apply governance over here, and now we're trying to apply governance on an integration, and governance on this integration over here. That's where things can start to get brittle on the edges there when it's all tied together. It's just a more trustworthy system. So
Mhm.
yeah, thanks for that. Did either of you have any other last thoughts before we wrap up that you wanted to share?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, Kara. Thank you.
All right, very good. Okay, so I am going to turn to questions now. Katie, can you hop on if anybody included some questions in the chat?
We don't have any questions right now. I think you guys
No
covered a
questions
lot in a
right
very
now.
short time.
All right. Well, I hope that gives everybody a good idea of the value of the platform and why it does make sense to think about this strategically and what your data means, why it's important to have it all connected, and when and I guess we didn't touch as much on when and where to use a point solution, but point solutions can make sense on the edges, right? Like that's one of the things that Microsoft really is focused on is they are intentionally modular, and that makes them the most scalable solution out there because your core platform, your core foundation and solution is always being invested in and updated by Microsoft. There's biannual updates that come out, and the and then if you want something that's best of breed for right now, and you're like, there's the specific, really feature functionality, that's where you can really add those on as on the edges and making sure that you're staying up with innovation. I see one question. Can we talk a little bit more about governance? Yeah, so Matt, do you want to talk a little bit more about governance? I mean, even thinking about things from when Boyer first rolled out AI, of course, with our, tight connection with Microsoft, we were early adopters of AI, and we had to put our own governance in place. And I know you were a big part of thinking through that strategy.
Yeah, so what I like to say, or what I see here, I kind of touched on it a little bit when I was talking about work IQ being, being able to very shortly pull in that Dataverse data. That's all applicable, or all of the security built inside of Dataverse is actually applied when that's happening. So it's not like we're allowing other people to see records or things that they should not see. We do build a lot of agents around here, and I think that's one of the benefits of, like, if you're looking at agentic AI, what do we do here? What's a great place to start? It's inside of those business applications like Business Central, or an app built on top of the common data model. And the reason being is because that security is respected from day one. When we go and connect to an agent to an environment, that agent is going there. It's talking to that environment and looking and reading the data that the user can see, not the whole data and figuring it out at the end. It's literally only getting the things that user can see. So I think there's a good amount of security and controls in place there that allow us to kind of block things and ensure that people are not getting access to sensitive data or data that they have no business, for their general day job to do. So.
Yeah, I think those permissions, we see that in the applications today. So even if, let's say you wanted to send a record to somebody else via Teams, or Outlook, something like that, the permissions layers are going to follow that as it goes through the whole ecosystem. So if somebody ends up receiving it, say somebody else forwards it on, and they don't have permissions, they're not going to be able to open that. So I think that's where we do see a lot of value, is that the permissions are very tight to each individual user. And that's definitely where we can apply those governance layers and, feel good about the separations that you do want and need in your business.
Yeah, I think there's a follow-up question. Is the security designed ad hoc with agents? And just to clarify, it's not. So it lives inside of that system. You get the full capabilities: view, edit, delete, share. Can I associate records together? All that stuff. You get very granular control over how you can look at and manipulate anything any records, any data that's in any of those tables. So.
And I think just in case the question was around the agents, the security that's in that base layer that Matt was just describing, that's going to follow through with those agents. So as we put agents in place, the security is following through into those agents. So the agents are also reliably separated. I can't access agents or data in agents that I don't have permissions to.
Correct.
So, well, here's a great example. We have an agent called Boyer 360, and it's going to connect to our ERP. It's going to connect to our CRM, and I think it's connecting to Matt. Is it Work 365? So it's connecting to 3 different places, and this is something that our leadership team has access to, but when I go in to use it, I don't have access, because it's going to give them that full view that they can access. So, that's one example.
Absolutely.
All right. Do you have recommendations on how we speak to our board of directors about putting our various data into Microsoft Copilot or Dataverse? Oh, that's a good point. Because I think that right now, if we're not, because there's a couple different ways of adopting AI, right? And usually a hybrid of the two is what's going to happen. We're going to see that bottom up approach where we have just, regular users and staff in an organization who are like many people at nonprofits are like, I got to wear this hat, I got to wear this hat, and today I'm switching and wearing this hat. You're wearing so many hats, and they know, right? They already know that Copilot is going to help them wear some of those hats. And so they're maybe, finding other, you know, sort of publicly available AI and maybe using that. So maybe they're going, you know what, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and I'm just going to throw this in ChatGPT. Well, what if they're throwing in spreadsheets or things like that that really shouldn't be going into a public AI like that? And you don't know it because there hasn't been any top-down governance put in place. And so I think that's where it's really important to recognize that staff who are stretched and really like their bandwidth is stretched and they're trying to do more with less, right? That's what we always see. That's a common theme at nonprofits. We're always trying to do more with less. And so they're going to take whatever tools they can find lying around. If we can come in with a top-down governance strategy where the board of directors or our executive leadership team is taking and owning that and now coming out with policies around here's what you can and can't do with AI. Here's who we're going to give access to, give the M365 Copilot or other access to the AI. That's when you're going to have a lot better adoption, safer adoption for one, and things like that. So I think that's the starting point, is to, especially when budgets are right now, we know for a lot of nonprofits is a concern. It's starting small. It's like, what's one, maybe we have 5 different point solutions. What's one that we could replace to at least get that one in the Dataverse? And then when funding and bandwidth is available, let's move that next one into the Dataverse and do that over, it might take 2 or 3 years, but when you think about where you're going to be in 2 or 3 years, you are now positioned to scale a lot from a more solid foundation, right? Your foundation's in place, you're positioned to scale. And as you're adding in AI, you've now applied true governance policy and procedure around that thoughtfully, not just like, oh, it came in through this left door and it came in through that door, and we don't actually know what's going on. So, and Matt, I'll let you add any thoughts you have to that, or Jen as well.
Let me. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of like nerdy stuff I could say about how can we talk to directors about, how Microsoft's key principles about, responsible and trustable AI and security by design. What I see that look like on a daily basis, right, is, we talked about that very low level kind of data record type access and control and permissions, but we can expand that out to, like, when we look at a whole Dataverse environment, we can control the tools. Can this environment even accept or call out to a different service? Those types of things. There's lots of different ways to lock this stuff down. So if you have specific questions about that, we'd be happy to help you, figure out a good way to talk to the board.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I do see one more question. How do you verify that your AI is HIPAA compliant and secure? So, oh, sorry. I think that one, I guess, Jeff, let me get back to you on that one. I'm not sure if I have a good answer for you right now. I know that Microsoft has done the testing, and that's part of the foundation for their compliance. Oh, perfect, Jen. Thank you. Jen just put a reference into the chat. So that's going to share a little bit more about where and how they've looked at that HIPAA compliance. I think that is a great question, though, because there are so many of our nonprofits, especially when we start to look in the social services area, who do want to make sure that we're hitting compliance there. But that's absolutely been a top concern of Microsoft as well. All right. So I do want, it looks like we're a little over, which is great. It's totally fine. But I do want to just say we do have that demo next week. If you do want to see a little bit more hands-on, again, it'll be a high level looking at the platform and what's possible. We'd be looking at focused fundraising, volunteer management, volunteer engagement, just at a very high level. We will showcase a donor agent as well. So for those of you working in that area, we'd love to see you on that demo. And I believe Katie put the link to that registration in the chat, so you can absolutely grab it from there. All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. We hope we were able to give you a high-level understanding of why we would want to move into that platform strategy versus, just responding retroactively to, we need this now, let's go grab whatever, point solution happens to, be the first one we see. So this is about being intentional. Okay, we are getting a few more questions in the chat. Let's see. Do you have time for another one, Matt, from a security perspective?
I've got a hard stop. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you do have a hard stop. I tell you
Yes.
what, Larry, if it's okay, I'd love to follow up with you individually on that one. So we'll definitely follow up, and thanks everyone again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.